Hounds, you are once again sitting down with greatness. We are having a conversation again here in the Houndcast in the hallowed halls of the House of Hounds. We have a legend who is an actress, a director, a voice actress. They do it all. They are also a singer. They are Kira Buckley, and in Zenless zzzero, they are our beloved Chingi. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Oh, I am extremely excited. I feel like I am sitting down with royalty right now. Your resume is absolutely stacked. And I'm doing my best not to fanboy because, as we discussed before, you play two of my favorite characters. You play Kuki Shinobu, and like we mentioned, you also play Chingi. So thank you very much, and I apologize if I get a little giddy.
No, that's all right.
So
I mean, yes, I have played a lot of characters, but I've been doing this for a long time, in all fairness. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yes. And you're one of the first here in the House of Hounds. You are my first VTuber that I've interviewed. So this is awesome. It's a unique experience for me.
I'm so excited. This is my second ever VTuber interview, so I apologize in advance for any technical stuff as we work it out. But I'm really excited, especially because I'm on hiatus from streaming right now. So it's really cool to get to come back in this capacity at least.
Oh, listen, we're streamers. We're used to scuff, so we're always working our way through it. All right, so let's dive into your lore. Going to start with the ever present one. How did you get into the world of acting?
So it is super different for everybody. One thing that I like to tell people is that there's not one specific path that you can follow. It's the biggest thing is it's important to have some kind of acting foundations. For some people, that's theater. For other people, it's kind of like doing stuff online, doing indie projects. For some people, it's like film and TV. For me, it definitely was kind of like I started online. I started doing like flash animations, indie projects, that sort of thing. So that is kind of like my background. And then I eventually saved up to move to LA and audition for like dubbing studios, game studios, that kind of stuff. But, there are so many different paths. And I'm sure with all the other actors that you've talked to, it's different for everybody.
Oh, and I love it. Everyone does have, these diverse paths and backgrounds. But what specifically drove you down, the voice acting lane? Because, I see you're extremely talented. You're a director, you're a singer, but it seems like you're leaning more into the voice work. Like your affinity for a microphone is there.
I mean, I knew that I wanted to be some kind of performer since I was like 12 years old. I did actually originally start wanting to be a singer. I'm not very good at it. Like, I'll be real. I like to sing for fun. I, by some miracle, have sang on projects a few times for like character singing, but it's not something that I'm like particularly gifted at, despite spending many years practicing. So, that was kind of my goal when I was a teenager. I was like, oh, I want to be in a rock band, which, as we all know, is not the most like practical career ambition. I mean, props to the people who are able to do it, but it is, you want to talk about a career goal that's even harder than acting. I would say, there you go. So I kind of knew that I wanted to do something with vocal performance, and I had taken some, like theater improv stage classes as a kid, and I didn't, I knew that I liked acting in that aspect, but I just wasn't really good with the whole like being on stage, like any of that kind of stuff, like that aspect of it. So then when I was like a teenager and I got into like anime and video games more and stuff, then just kind of realizing that like, oh, like this is a whole avenue of vocal performance that I could do. And of course I was not good at it when I started. I started as a hobby on like amateur voice acting forums that don't exist anymore. And, it was, I was not good because I had no idea what I was doing. I would just like play a game or something and imitate the voices. And the funny thing was, one of the games that I did that with was like one of the early Soulcalibur games. And then I ended up being the voice match for Talim in Soulcalibur VI. So, as much as I say like, oh, like don't spend too much time on impressions because it's such a niche case that you will actually be asked to use it. That was one of the weird situations where it actually paid off.
That's another character that I love playing with. This is phenomenal. The inner child in me is very much whelmed. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Now, what would you say was your breakout role where you were like, okay, this is it. I'm here now.
The interesting thing about that, and I actually ended up writing a whole article about it, is that it's kind of always a work in progress, at least for voice. I feel like maybe for film and TV actors, there is kind of like that one defining role, but, and I mean, sometimes voice actors have that, but in my case, it was interesting because I did a lot of different projects. So I would see the first role that maybe people knew me for, like on any kind of wider scale, was to be from NieR Automata. But I had done a lot of work in JRPGs and anime prior to that. So I would say a lot of people maybe got introduced to my work through that role, or they did not know of my work before that. But I mean, I had done stuff like I was in Danganronpa, I was in Disgaea, like a whole bunch of anime. So I had like done a lot of stuff before that. And then even after that, I was still, constantly building up. So actually, I would say in terms of, because I do a lot of conventions, a lot of like meet and greet stuff, I would say like by and large, the big role that people know me for the most, if they do know my work, is Mitsuri from Demon Slayer. Like 80% of the people who come to my table, I would say, are Demon Slayer fans. And it's interesting because I was cast in that role in 2020. So it was after NieR. It was after the first role that I got in JoJo, which later I got Jolene. But that was kind of the thing that, I don't know, I think that people know the most of my work, but I did have big roles before that. And then Mitsuri was only in like one episode of the first season. And then in like season 3, she had way more stuff. So it took a while between being cast in Demon Slayer and having my big character arc. So it's interesting because for me, like, I guess it's a roundabout way of saying like I didn't have one defining moment because I've been doing so much stuff over time, and some roles have stuck out to people more than others.
Yeah, it's because I say all the time, you guys take on these characters, and we find different ways to, I guess you could say, like attach to you. Like when someone likes a character, there's an emotional attachment there. There's something we see that connects us, and one to always say, give you your flowers. Thank you very much for the work you've done. Thank you for the work that you'll continue to do. But to dive a little bit deeper, what do you say is the main thing that helps you get into character, embrace the role?
One of the interesting things is, and I'm sure other actors have brought this up as well that you've interviewed, but we usually don't get materials ahead of time. With a lot of projects, especially video games, sometimes with anime, maybe it'll be up on like streaming services and they do the English dub later to where it's like, okay, I can go check this out on, Crunchyroll or whatever. Not that we always even have time to do that, but a lot of times it's kind of, like, let's say, for example, Shinobu in Genshin, obviously they release all the languages of a character at once. So it's not like, oh, I can play the Chinese version and see what she sounds like and how she acts like. It's like, no, like you get kind of a character description, but everything's codenamed, everything's different because obviously it's really important to prevent against leaks and things like that. So a lot of times you don't really know too much about your character until you actually go in for your session. And by that point, you've already like signed your NDAs, and then they can say like, okay, like here's some more about what we're working on, the world and the character and stuff like that. But, in a lot of cases, it's just not possible to do research ahead of time. So, it's not like a play or like a film or something where the actors get their script and they can study their lines. It's like, it's mostly cold reading. So, a lot of what we're relying on is, of course, the voice director, and in a lot of sessions for games especially, there will be some people maybe from the localization team or from the game company who will be there to provide input and context and assist the voice director in that. So basically, you're kind of relying on what people tell you about, this is the world, this is your character. You can gain a lot from just seeing like your character's interactions with others. But sometimes if I'm not sure, I will ask questions to clarify, like if my character in a project interacts with one of their parents. You know, a lot of times there's complicated relationships that characters may have with parents. So I'll say like, okay, well, how does this character feel about her father? Like, is it a good relationship? Or are they like, it's strange? You know, like what is it? Because that informs your read. But a lot of times just like the lines you're reading, seeing the character's line that comes before yours in the script, everything that the director, and if clients are there, everything they're saying gives you the context you need to kind of build out that character. And sometimes, because I work on so much localized media, like projects from other languages, a lot of times we will get to hear at least some of the original performance. Sometimes it's for every line. Like if we have to do strict timing for things, we may hear, like I think when we were doing NieR, we heard like original language for each line. So that was really helpful for context as well. But then other times it's like, we don't get that. So it just kind of depends. Like if there is, I work on, you know, a lot of things, obviously they're done in Japanese originally. So if I can hear the Japanese performance, I do use that pretty heavily to inform what I'm doing unless the team requests something different. Okay. But we don't always get that. So I tell actors it's good to be flexible either way. Like you can closely match ref if needed, or you can do your own thing because sometimes you don't get ref.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I love that multifaceted approach. Now, you know, with you working so heavily in anime and in gaming, do you find there's like distinct differences in how you have to perform?
Yeah, a lot of it, like performance-wise and stylistically, just depends on the genre of a project. So, you know, if you're voicing something that's very like cinematic, very much like in the style of kind of like a real world, like real people kind of characters, then it is going to be a different performance than if you do like a big, colorful, over-the-top JRPG where everything's kind of like comedic and, you know, but in terms of like technically speaking, I would say the biggest difference with anime is every single line has to be dubbed to picture. So in games, you will sometimes have that. Like sometimes we'll have, for example, like let's say Zenless Zzzero, because that was a recent one. You see like those animated cutscenes, and obviously those are already done, and you know it's going to go along with like the original Chinese voiceovers. So in that case, we do have to do it like an anime where we watch the scene down and we match to picture and we make sure that the mouth is matching the lines and stuff like that. But then in terms of what we call wild lines, which are just the regular things in the game, like I don't know, say you're exploring the hollow and Chingi is like, oh, we got supplies here, whatever. Usually that kind of stuff is just kind of, you know, it doesn't have to be like a strict timing, or sometimes it'll be like, oh, you can go as long as this, but not over, you know. Oh. So I would say overall we have a little more freedom with like timing and pacing stuff, unless it's an animated cutscene in a video game. But anime, obviously, it's like the animation is there. You have to match exactly what they're doing.
Well, no, that's pretty cool to know. Now, you know, with you being the voice of Officer Qingyi, was there something that you did? Well, how did you find Qingyi's voice?
So, interestingly, I think when I auditioned for her, I may have gotten a reference of the original Chinese voice. I honestly can't remember. I think I did, but I kind of just tried to do that. Like you know, I kind of got the sense, okay, like she's an android, so maybe she's not going to be super expressive, but there were little moments where I could bring in subtle snark. So I liked the idea. And then another way that I like to talk about Chingi is she's kind of like, how do you do, fellow kids? Because she's like, I kind of play her like she is like this old lady, but she's in an android body, so like presumably she wouldn't age, right? But she's like, you know, she'll even say things sometimes like, oh, I don't know like what slang the youngsters are using or whatever. So I kind of like the idea that she's just like yeah, she looks young, but she's been around a long time. She has no patience for you know, dealing with nonsense. And you can tell she's also like very health conscious, because she's always like, oh, drink hot water, it's good for you. Yes. And you know, I think she does care about like even though she is an officer, I feel like she cares about justice, like doing the right thing. Like she cares about obviously like Ju Yuen, her like partner on the the squad, and she she cares about helping the bamboo and stuff like that, and I think that's really cute. Like, I feel like she sometimes has that maybe like, oh, kind of colder, I don't care exterior, or like the kind of deadpan delivery, but I think that there is like part of her that does care.
Oh, and I love hearing, your approach to that, because there's an interaction between her and another character, Seth, when you're tagging out in battle, and she's like, take it I can't remember the exact line, but it's like, take it easy, young man, or something like that. So hearing you let us in on that is phenomenal. I love those interactions. It makes the game feel so alive. So thank you.
I just love all the interactions between different characters. I was really excited when Seth and Jane came out. Like, okay, it was kind of hard because I knew I wanted to pull for Jane, but Chingi's banner was right before that. And obviously, like, since I started playing the game, I didn't pull for anybody because I was explicitly saving up for Chingi for obvious reasons.
Understood.
And I wanted to get her weapon and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, okay. But I wanted to get like, I keep calling them constellations on accident, but I wanted to get like mindscapes for Chingi, but I couldn't do that because I was like, I have to save a little bit for Jane. So I have to wait for Chingi's reruns because I just have her just at like M0 or whatever. But I did get her weapon, which is great because when I pulled for Nilu's weapon for Kuki Shinobu, I had terrible, terrible luck with that. I spent so much money on that banner. I was on stream when I did it. And I was just like, I'm never pulling on a weapon banner again. But obviously, like, if I'm voicing a 5-star character in a game, like, I do need to get it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to pull on this banner. I spent $50 and I got her and I got her W engine. So I was like, okay, that's actually really good luck. And then I still got Jane. I got Jane in like a single 10 pull when she came around.
Getting in and out of a banner and getting the character and weapon for $50 is god tier luck. I'm happy.
I know, and it's really funny because in Genshin and in Star Rail, I have terrible luck. I always lose my 50-50. Like in Genshin, the running joke is I always lose to Chi-Chi. And then in Star Rail, the running joke is I always lose to Himiko. Like, when I was trying to get Run Mei, it was so awful. Like, I got to, like, hard pity, lost to Himiko, got to hard pity again, and finally got her when the banner had, like, 2 hours left on it or something. It was,
right,
it was a mess. So, yeah, so actually having luck in zzzero was like, no way. But I do have, because Kuki Shinobu is a 4-star, so obviously I do have her C6.
Listen, hard pity feels personal. Like, whenever it happens.
Yeah, it really does.
I'm like, bro, like, and I say this jokingly. I'm like, yo, I hate this game. And like, I'm going through it. But like, when you finally get the character, I call it the pain and agony of gotcha. So.
Yeah, that's why they call it gotcha, right? Because they gotcha. Right. They got your wallet.
That was definitely a dad joke, but as a father, I approve. That was awesome.
Oh, I love it. I mean, I love himbo characters. So, like, my husbandos in each game are obviously Arataki Ito for Genshin,
I knew it.
Boot Hill for Star Rail, and Billy for ZZZ. So, I don't know, there's a very specific type of, like, gotcha man that I'm like, yeah, I like them.
Okay, we have Tall. Who is it? Billy, Arataki Ito, and Boot. Okay, so Tall, I would say robotic. There's a theme there. Ito.
No. But I feel like they all kind of have a little bit of himbo energy. I don't know.
Oh, definitely. 100%. When Ito first came out, I felt so relatable to that character. I don't think of myself as a himbo, but like, I get it. I'm like, he's a bro.
Technically, my favorite character in the game, if we're not talking exclusively playables, is Ushi. I love cows and bulls and bovine animals, as you can clearly see. So I actually have an Ushi plush.
Ushi is absolutely broken. When I first got Ushi, I built up the character and I launched this cow and it did 100K. And I was like, excuse me.
I'm going to put my little Ushi plush in my lap. I love cows.
That is
He's
awesome.
an emote on my stream too.
Well, let me ask, how does it feel to, play in these properties and these games and then step into, the world of content creation. As a content creator myself, it's a little bit of a different world, but, what are your thoughts on that, being a performer, but then being, more grounded and say, hey, I'm just here playing games like you guys.
Interesting thing is Genshin Impact is what got me to start streaming, because I always thought that I couldn't be a streamer because I'm not really like funny or charismatic or outgoing. I'm just kind of like a
I
little
disagree.
hermit just hanging out with my cats. But I just always thought that I wasn't like the type that could be successful. And success is like whatever. You kind of have to enjoy doing it for the sake of doing it. But what got me to try out streaming was when Kuki Shinobu was released, because I was like, okay, well, I'm going to pull for my character. And I feel like just doing it by myself in my room is like there's not a lot of hype with that. Like, I want people to be able to watch like the pulls for the character. And I was so like, my first streams were so janky. It was literally it was before I had my PS5, because you couldn't get one very easily at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I was playing Genshin on my PS4, and it would take like 30 whole seconds to teleport from one place to the next because it was so laggy. But I streamed like directly from the PS4, like it just streams like your game feed.
Yep.
And so like the quality was awful, whatever. But I pulled for her, and it was fun. Like, we had a fun little, not like a huge crowd, but like a fun little group that stopped by. And so I was like, okay, I think I want to pull for Ito too. So I was like, oh man, Ito. I always say Ito is like, what if you took a traditional Japanese oni but made him hot, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to pull for Ito. And I decided to do another stream for that. And then because it was fun and I didn't have anyone making like horrible mean comments, thankfully, I think that's part of, because I stream on Twitch and not YouTube. So it's like people are in the live chat and they comment as it happens, and, but I was like, okay, I'll try this a few more times. And then over time, I slowly, I was able to get like a capture card and a streaming laptop and OBS and all that kind of stuff. And then finally able to become a VTuber later, because again, I always thought, oh, you have to spend like $3,000, but with like Vroid, my friend made my model for me, and it was like really affordable. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll be like a 3D VTuber, whatever. So it was just kind of like over time, I built up what I call my community. And it's not big. I think that's like the other thing. And I've told this to other actors who want to stream as well, is that you can't expect to have those huge numbers. Like, you see, there's a few people who are actors who also streamers who just, they had like amazing, like power with their branding, and they really just like did everything right, got in at the right time, built up their brand and their audience, and they have like huge followings. But that's the exception, not the norm. So like, I think it's normal. Sometimes I felt bad, like, oh, I struggle to get like even 50 viewers or whatever, but like, you can't, you have to like enjoy it. Like, you can't let that cloud your vision for, because ultimately it's like, I would rather have the small community that I have that's like really cool and supportive, and they co-op with each other even when I'm not there, and we have inside jokes and memes about like Baja Blast and stuff. And, I would rather have that than like a huge community where it feels more impersonal.
Yeah, well, and I agree with that 100% because I take pride in, knowing my community. And over time, as I've grown, not everyone's always going to be there for every part of your journey. And I get that and I
Sure.
respect that. But, sometimes people will pop in the chat and they'll be like, yo, Trey, do you remember me? And I'm like, yes, I do. How have you been? And I get that. I 100% love that. And as I am beginning to grow a little bit bigger, I do find it a little bit harder. So I'm doing my best to hold on to that, that closeness within the community. So I get it 100%.
Yeah, I found that the Discord for my stream has been just so instrumental, especially like right now when I'm unfortunately on hiatus. Just having the Discord really helps, because we can still be like, hey, here's cat pictures or cow pictures or, whatever.
100%. Now, Are there some properties where you're like, oh, I would love to step into that universe and put my hand or put my stamp onto it? Whether it be an anime or a game, not stepping on any toes, but just like a
Sure.
universe you'd like to step in or work in.
Well, it's really funny. I always joke that I'm never allowed to ask for anything ever again because I did get my number one dream role of all time, which was Jolene in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Like, I literally wanted to play that character for 8 years. Like, that was one of those, like, I put that out into the universe for so long. And I was like, I just want a shot. I just want to audition for her. And so booking that was like, I will always say that is the greatest career achievement of my life. Like, I could be, I don't know. I always joke like I could be in like a Disney movie or something, and for me personally, nothing would ever top being Jolene. But so that was like the biggest one, and I feel very grateful. Of course, I would love to be in like Smash Brothers if we're talking. Hey, it can be a really unrealistic goal. um, uh, like, I mean, I'm already in a lot of fighting games, thankfully, but I always want to be in more fighting games. And honestly, like, I would love to be in a Honkai Star Rail. I mean, I played a couple little NPCs, but I play the game all the time. I'm like super addicted to it, and I'm like, oh man, I'm in the other two. So I hope that eventually the right character will come along that is a good fit. Because so for like Genshin, it took, let's see, I think so. It was 2022, I think, that I recorded Shinobu, and the game came out in like 2020. So I was like bummed because I didn't get auditions because there's just so many factors with like getting certain auditions. Right. So I was like, man, I really want to be in Genshin. The character designs look so cool. It just seems like a cool property, but I wasn't accessing those auditions at the time. And so I was like really bummed, thinking, oh man, like every time a new character came out, like, oh, I wish I could like try for these or whatever. And then eventually, when I did get to read for Shinobu and a few other characters, when I saw Shinobu, I was like, I hope I book this one. Like, I'd be happy to be in the project in general, but I would really, really like to be Shinobu. And that was the one that I ended up getting a callback for and that I ended up booking. So, I feel like it was kind of one of those, the character that was meant for me, that was right for me, came along. And I mean, in Zenless as well, like I didn't get to audition for a lot of the early batches of characters, but when I read for like Chingi and Juya, and I was like, I mean, both these ladies seem pretty cool, but I really want Chingi, partly because she has twin tails, and I'm really biased towards voicing twin tail characters. And then I got that one. So, I think it is like one of those things, like we're always like, oh, what if, I got to read for this property or this character or whatever. But when my friend puts it as like, when something is meant for you, it'll come your way. And so I like to think of it that way because, I mean, all the time, like we audition for projects almost every day that we don't book. Like that's just statistically the nature of the business. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times when I've read for something and didn't end up booking it, and then when I see like, one of my friends or colleagues booked it, I'm like, oh yeah, they're the perfect choice for that role. Like, of course I didn't, so I think it is really one of those things where part of like growth as an actor is being able to say, you know what, I wasn't the best fit for this character, but the person they got is amazing and they slayed it.
No, fair enough. Now, I think you have to give us the recipe because it sounds like you took your luck stat and maxed it out. Because you're like, oh, I want this character, got it. Ooh, I like because they got the twin tails, got it. Like that is phenomenal. Like you. Like you audition or you see a role and you just have this affinity for it, and then the universe is like, it's actually meant for you.
But many times it also didn't happen. We only see the successes and not the failures, right? Like there were a lot of roles where, oh, I really wanted that and I didn't book it or whatever. But I think, and I know this sounds like a really boring cop-out answer, but I stand behind it 100% that the best way to get the opportunities that you want, and obviously there's a lot of factors, like things like luck are a factor, like whatever, you can't really control that, but they say luck is when preparation meets opportunity, and the biggest secret to like nailing those opportunities you want when they come around is to be good at what you do. And I don't mean like, oh, I'm great at what I do or anything like that. But I mean, I worked like the biggest thing that helped me towards booking Jolene. It wasn't because like I didn't book it because I wanted it. I booked it because I was like, okay, realistically, if I want this role in, however many years that anime was going to happen, because obviously I'd read the manga way prior to that, it was like, okay, well, I need to be a really good actor so that one, I can get the audition in the first place, and two, I will be a strong contender for the role regardless of who I'm up against or how good they are.
Okay.
Because again, no one's going to give you a role just because you want it, but by saying, okay, I want to make sure that my skills are really solid. I want to really go hard on trying to improve my acting, my technique, like just putting in a lot of hours, like especially during the pandemic, I was recording so many hours a day. I was just like, because cons were on hold, obviously.
Yeah.
So I was like just going hardcore, and I was doing so much dubbing, so much like a lot of games and stuff, but especially a lot of dubbing. So I feel like I really leveled up because I was just marathoning work. And all those things. And I did try to work on like more nuanced acting, more, all this kind of stuff. So I really was trying to just put the work in as an actor. And I think a lot of people, because I see this, for example, a lot of newer actors understandably are like, I really want to be in Genshin Impact. Totally get it. I did too. Right. But the biggest thing is, okay, if you got an audition for Genshin Impact tomorrow, would you be competitive enough that you would book that role over all the established actors that are already working in the business? And, that's kind of a thing that people have to think about is, okay, are my skills, like, we all know, okay, I want opportunities, but it's also like, are your skills there to where if that opportunity did come around, you would be competitive? And so that's why, my big advice to people is always just like work on your craft. Another actor that I really admire, Zeno Robinson, said there's no substitute for putting in the work. And I just fully agree with that.
It's just making sure you're prepared and ready to go. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Nuggets of wisdom. Now, to ask, if there were three things you were to say, you know what, actor, voice actor, these are the things that I say you need to be good at or proficient at, what would you say they would be?
That's a great question. The first thing I think is believability, 100%. Like when I sometimes direct people on, making their voice reels and things like that. And the biggest thing that I tell people is, and this is something one of my early acting teachers told me, and I never forgot it, was I have to believe what you're saying. The audience has to believe what you're saying. A lot of people, I've been there too. We've all done this. They get in the habit of what we call like performing the line.
Okay.
So they're reading it in a way that they think this sounds dramatic or this sounds like the way that I should say this, but they're not really connecting to where the character is emotionally. Like this acting teacher that I had in college was always like, you got to get in the headspace of your character. So, if we listen to, let's say like a casting director listens to an audition, they're not looking for people who can perform the lines really well on a technical level that sounds good. They're looking for who do I believe, who actually is emotionally connecting with the scene. And and it's hard because a lot of times we don't get a lot of context in auditions, but it's kind of like, does this sound like this character is actually speaking their truth, or does it sound like an actor is like reading and performing the lines? Because ultimately we want to feel like this is truly the character speaking.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's like the biggest thing, I think. The other thing I think, and this is always secondary to performance because this can be learned and trained. There is a very technical nature to what we do. There's certain things, obviously if you're dubbing or if you're doing anything with time constraints, you do need to be able to match that timing. You need to be able to match what's going on in the picture. Do like the battle grunts and efforts that, fit this particular cue, how it's going to be used in game. Just the technical stuff in terms of sound. If somebody's recording from home, then there's obviously a lot more technical stuff they have to be aware of.
Okay.
So just I think it's good for every actor to have an awareness of that kind of stuff. And I think there's even some classes that take people who are used to like performing on stage, for example, and be like, okay, here's how you do that, but confined in a booth.
Right.
And then I guess like the third is to just like try to be a good person, because like no one wants to work with a jerk. I feel like that is also a cop out answer, but I mean, so like don't be a jerk is one of the golden rules, and it's true, because you can be, no matter like how good you are, you better be like the best actor in the world if you expect people to put up with
No, and
someone who is like unkind.
and I don't think that's a cop out answer, because there have been so many like spaces and opportunities that I've come across just by, I don't know, just being my authentic self and, not being a jerk. Because
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, people talk to each other. We live in a very socially driven society. So if it's getting out there that you're not fun to work with, that you may be a jerk, there might be a sponsorship that, you had an opportunity at, but ooh, they heard, I don't want to work with that creator, or I don't want to work with that actor. And, it's part of being, in the human experience, be kind to each other. We're in this together. But at the end of the day, like you said, no one wants to work with that type of negativity. So that I agree with it.
Yeah, and also just connecting with people genuinely, because I know, especially for new actors, there's so much of this emphasis they put on networking and stuff like that. And sometimes they will maybe reach out to people in hopes that person can further their career or like open a door for them, which sometimes they don't even have the power to open a door. Like, for example, like voice directors often don't cast for the projects they direct. But, I think it is kind of transparent when someone is doing that. And I'm sure in the content creator space as well, that's a huge thing of people like reaching out to big streamers and stuff and be like, hey, let's collab, not because, from a space of like, hey, I love your content and I want to do something with you, but I want to get more viewers or whatever. So I try to be conscious, like when I'm in spaces like that, of like, okay, if I ask someone to collab, I want it to be someone with like a similar or like lower viewership than I have, so that people don't think I'm like, using them. Because I think that is like a very there is a lot of that, unfortunately, in the creative fields, and it's hard. I mean, I've had people reach out to me on the voice side that were clear like, hey, can you like get me into this place or whatever, and I'm like, I don't even have that power. Like like if you want to reach out to me as a friend, that's cool, but like right. I can't really help I can barely even help like my own like closest friends and trying to get them in. If there was an opportunity they'd be perfect for. So
because it's like if you had that power, you'd be like, I'd have every role ever I wanted.
Well, that's the other thing too. Like some people joke like, well, I don't know, if you know how to get in on this project, I'd try to get myself into or whatever. So I mean, I love the few times I've had the opportunity to cast, I've really enjoyed it. But it's never about like, oh, here's the people who like send compliments or do nice. It's literally just like, okay, who narrow it down to the selections that are most fitting, in my opinion, for this role. And then the end client makes the final decision, and they usually don't know who any of these people are. You're just sending them like files, and they're like, I like, this one or whatever.
Fair enough. Well, Kira, this has been a very fun experience. I appreciate, you sitting down, working with me, having this conversation. Where can we find you online? Where can we get more of the Kira Buckland experience?
I will admit I'm not super active on socials, but I do. My Twitch channel is Miss Ziggy Stardust, MSZIGGY, and then Stardust, like David Bowie. And that is probably, like, especially if you like playing these games and stuff like that, my community on Twitch is usually the best way to stay informed. Otherwise, you can just look up my name on like Twitter or Instagram. I mean, my Instagram is usually pictures of my cats and my car, to be honest, but there's that.
Well, I appreciate you. And Hounds, you have once again sat down with greatness. Like, comment, subscribe, support these phenomenal voice actors and actresses in all facets. They bring so much of themselves to us, to the experience, and they help us have these memories that is attached to our gaming, our anime, and just this creative space. So at the end of the day, make sure you stay fierce, make sure you keep gaming, and welcome to the House of Hounds. We're out.